It is great to have you here with us. My name's Dave. I'm one of the leaders here at Grace Church. Isn't Christmas magical? Or at least it's supposed to be magical, isn't it? Maybe you're sitting there and you're kind of having to kind of endure this afternoon with kind of clenched teeth and clenched fists and clenched toes as well. But even when Christmas is supposed to be magical, even the most optimistic of Christmas person, I think we can still find a reason to complain at Christmas. You can still find something to complain about. I think two kind of common and popular complaints that we have at Christmas is maybe one that Christmas has just become too commercial nowadays. And another one is that maybe Christmas has become too shallow nowadays. And I guess depending on your disposition and kind of who you are, probably determines whether you're likely to be somebody who might say that Christmas is too commercial, or you might be somebody who's likely to say Christmas is too shallow. And some people might be in neither of those camps. Here's the problem that I have, is that I am both of those people. I should be somebody who complains that Christmas is both too commercial and that it is too shallow. My theory is that the whole idea that Christmas is too commercial was a complaint invented by people who had to pay for their children's presents. And I never understood this complaint until I had children who started making Christmas lists. And now I understand the source of that complaint that Christmas is too commercial. But I think we've actually moved on from complaining about that a lot of the time. Loads of us understand now that British high streets and British restaurants and British bars wouldn't exist, wouldn't be able to keep going if they didn't have the golden quarter, if that Christmas wasn't commercial. But what about Christmas being too shallow? Again, I'm the kind of person who should complain about that. I'm the pastor of a church. I'm the kind of person who goes, don't you understand how rich and deep the meaning of Christmas is? The thing is, I think we've actually moved on from making that complaint as well. Many of us who would call ourselves Christians know that we're in a tiny minority of people who live and speak and talk and think about Christianity on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. That Christianity for most of the year is very much on the sidelines. And actually, it's not that Christmas feels too shallow. It feels like Christmas is a privilege. That Christianity moves from being on the sidelines to actually playing on the pitch for a few weeks of the year and has a kind of higher level in our public discourse. But maybe there's a deeper reason why we find something to moan about at Christmas. And that is that we know that Christmas is supposed to be enchanted. And so any time where it feels anything less than enchanted, anything when it feels less than magical, it doesn't quite live up to our expectations. Look, you should never make life decisions based on the fact that somebody complained about something on the internet. People complaining about things on the internet is just what the internet does to people. It's like kind of making a life decision based on, I saw some grass the other day and it was green. Shouldn't alter what you think. Nonetheless, if you have been in the kind of internet social circles that talk about life in Salisbury over the course of the last couple of weeks, you will have heard a fair few complaints about the state of Salisbury, and particularly the state of the market square, and people going, well, I just wish it could be more Christmassy. I want it to be more. I want it to be more. But what do we mean when we say more Christmassy? We mean we want it to have more sparkle, more enchantment, more magic to it. But do you know what? It's not surprising that you'd think that. Because there is a much deeper experience that we all live through that would make you think that. And there's a philosopher, a modern philosopher by the name of Charles Taylor, who will help you understand why. See, Taylor describes, and when I refer to him as Taylor, I can't help but think people are going to think I'm talking about another contemporary modern philosopher and songwriter called Taylor, but not that one. Charles Taylor talks about how modern life is like living in a world where everything is imminent. What does imminent mean? Well, imminent means experiencing reality and everything that matters seems to be explainable and accountable for within the boundaries of the world in which you live. What does that mean? What is that? That's very philosophy kind of talk. What does that actually mean? It means, imagine you are living your entire life in a beautifully constructed and climate-controlled room. And that room has got perfect lighting. It is comfortable. There is endless entertainment. There is food constantly available. It is safe. There is even great Wi-Fi. Everything you need is inside that room. And even everything meaningful, everything with a purpose, is supposed to be explainable in the terms of what is within the room. But I think we all know that if you were living like that, at some point, you would find yourself restless. You would want to be able to know what was outside of the room. The food is still good. The Wi-Fi is still working. Yet you're wondering, is this all there is? The room is not bad, but it is closed. And Taylor describes this as being haunted by the transcendent. We live in this immanent world where everything around us is explainable. But there's this longing for something transcendent, a longing for something magical, a longing for something spiritual is a desire we have. We don't just want the market square to be more Christmassy. We want existence to be more Christmassy. And that is the reason why everybody wants to be a kid at Christmas. Now, if you're a kid in this room at Christmas, you might be thinking, I don't want to be a kid at Christmas. All the grown-ups seem to be enjoying this, but I just want to be across the corridor next door doing something fun. Kids, trust me, in a few moments' time, I'm going to ask everybody a question. Most of the primary school-age children in this room are going to be better equipped to answering that question than the adults. So just hold on a second. But here's why everybody wants to be a kid at Christmas. Irma Bombeck, who's an American comedy writer, she puts this beautifully when she says, there is nothing sadder in this world than to awake Christmas morning and not be a child. Not to feel the cold on your bare feet as you rush to the Christmas tree in the living room. Not to have your eyes sparkle at the wonderment of discovery. Not to rip the ribbons of the shiny boxes with such abandon. There's nothing sadder in the world to wake up and not be a child. Everyone wants to be a child at Christmas, but not just because children have more fun, not just because children get more presents, because there is a transcendent experience. Your eyes sparkle with wonderment and discovery. We long for Christmas that hasn't lost its magic. And Taylor would suggest, I would suggest, that those are deeply held desires in all of us, actually. And if you've listened carefully, the readings that you've heard through the course of this evening, readings that are read all over the world at this time of year, those verses we have heard explain that life can, in fact, have something transcendent to it. Life has got something magical about it. There is something, actually, that can offer you the chance to be a child again, but it comes in the most unexpected of ways. That first reading we heard this evening was from Genesis chapter 22, where God says to Abraham, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. And that is God's way of saying, I am making a promise, and I have every intention of keeping this promise. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand of the seashore. God is saying to this man, Abraham, and this is probably the oldest story you will hear all Christmas. This is nearly 4,000 years ago. God says to this man, Abraham, your descendants will be as numerous as the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky. You've got to understand the significance of what he's saying there. Now, there's a modern way of understanding the significance of what he's saying there. What of those two numbers do you think is bigger? Don't answer yet. I'm going to ask you all to answer in a moment. Do you think there are more grains of sand in the world, or do you think there are more stars in the universe? I'm going to ask you for grains of sand. I'm going to get everyone who thinks grains of sand to put their hand up in a second, and then I'll say stars, and then put your hand up if you think it's stars. And if you are sitting on your hands thinking, I have no idea which is the right answer to that, and I don't want to be embarrassed as the only person who gets it wrong, there's quite a lot of primary school-age children in the room who had a science week earlier this term where they found out the answer to that. So if you're an adult and you don't have a clue what the answer is, well, firstly, shame on you for not remembering your science weeks as a child. But secondly, just look around for somebody who's kind of 7 or 8 years old and copy them. Okay, so who thinks there are more grains of sand in the whole world, including the Sahara Desert, the Mojave Desert, the Great Sandy Desert? Put your hands up for sand. Okay, and put your hands up for stars in the universe. The stars have it comfortably, and it's good to say that those in the room, you are comfortably aligned with reality. Even by a negative and kind of pessimistic estimate, there are about 1,000 times as many stars in the observable universe as there are grains of sand on planet Earth. So if you put your hand up for sand, you were not just wrong, you were really wrong. Here's the thing. Some things are not supposed to just be understood, they are supposed to be felt. On Wednesday night, after spending a couple of hours at the Oxrow in the centre of Salisbury, I walked out of there, and it was for the first time in days it felt like it hadn't been raining. And so I looked up to the sky to see what the sky would look like, and there was still cloud cover though. And I could see maybe 6 or so stars. I was so disappointed by that, and I was so conscientious of what we were looking at today that I then got up early on Thursday morning, and it was still dark, and the sky was clearer, and I looked to the sky at about 6 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and I could make out about 12 stars. And so then I tried again last night. I went out into the garden at 9 o'clock, and I managed to count to about 20 before I realized I was standing in the garden and in my PJs at 9 o'clock in the evening, and it was freezing, and I went back inside. The thing is that God was not making this promise to Abraham under a wintry sky in Salisbury. God was making this promise to Abraham sat under a rural Middle Eastern sky. And have you ever seen a starry night sky when you're near the equator? It is something spectacular. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand of the seashore. Some things are not supposed to be understood, they're supposed to be felt. And when you understand the scale of the promise that God is making at this moment, you find yourself going, how? Abraham's an old man with a single son sitting underneath a rural Middle Eastern sky. How will he have descendants who would number the stars of the heavens? How? Well, the unexpected answer to that question of how is also unexpectedly the answer to the question of all of our longings to feel like children at Christmas. Because 1,900 years after God makes that promise to Abraham in this rural Middle Eastern setting, in a different rural Middle Eastern setting, in a quiet town, in a corner of nowhere, a young mother is having a baby for the first time in a dusty and unglamorous setting. And now, Beth and Mark are going to come and perform a song for us that speaks of that unexpected event. And then I'm going to come back up in a moment and try and explain how that answers how God would fulfill that promise to Abraham and would fulfill our longing to feel like Christmas children at Christmas. Please stay seated as these guys perform for us.
You could have stepped into creation with fire for all to see, brought every tribe and nation to their knees, arriving with the host of heaven and royal robe and crown, the rulers of the earth all bowing down. But you chose meekness over majesty, wrapped your power in humanity, and glory be to you alone, the King who reigns from a manger throne. My life, my praise, everything I own to Jesus, the King on a manger throne. You could have marched in all your glory into the heart of Rome, showed them splendor like they'd never known. But you wrote a better story in humble Bethlehem, creator in the arms of common men. You will die for our redemption, and you will rise so we can live. Glory be to you alone, the King who reigns from a manger throne. My life, my praise, everything I own, to Jesus the King on a manger throne. From heaven to the cradle, from cradle to the cross, let heaven and nature sing, this is our King. But the grave couldn't hold him, our God has overcome. Let heaven and nature sing, this is our King. From heaven to the cradle, from cradle to the cross, let heaven and nature sing, this is our King. But the grave couldn't hold him, our God is overcome. Let heaven and nature sing, this is our King. Oh, hail the King, oh, hail the King, oh, hail the King. Oh, glory be to you alone, the King who reigns from a manger throne. My life, my praise, everything I own, to Jesus the King on a manger throne. My life, my praise, everything I own, to Jesus the King from a manger throne. To Jesus the King on a manger throne.
How do you answer? How does God fulfill his oldest possible promise to Abraham, that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky? How do you answer our longing to feel like children at Christmas through the one who comes on a manger throne, Jesus? Earlier this evening we read those famous words from John chapter 1. Again, words read all over the world at times like this, where John says, the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Those words were being written down by Jesus' closest earthly friend. Years after his life of teaching and miracles, after his death, after his resurrection. And so, after all of those things have happened, and being a first-hand witness to all of them, John writes those down and looks back at not just his life, not just his early years, but the very beginning, his very coming into the world. And he says, that was nothing ordinary. It was light coming into darkness. Do you realize what that means? In somebody else's language, John is saying this is the transcendent becoming immanent. This is the extraordinary becoming ordinary. This is the spiritual becoming physical. This is like living your whole life in a room where you have loads of what you need, but you find yourself longing for something more, longing to know if there's something outside of it, and somebody smashing the door in from the outside and revealing to us that there is something more. And his best friend then says, if you receive him, if you believe in his name, you have become children of God. What if our longing, what if our desire to be children at Christmas is not just nostalgia for the Decembers that we had when we were growing up, but what if it's actually a longing for something that's deeper and something that's higher at the same time? Not to be children again, but to be children of God. If you wish everything could be a bit more Christmassy, if you wish life could be a bit more enchanted, if immanent isn't enough for you, if you long for the transcendent, then Jesus' birth is exactly, I think, what that is offering to us. It is the most enchanting thing possible, because it is the most enchanting person possible, God himself making himself understandable to us. And if you receive him, if you believe in his name, you have the right to become children of God. But hold on. What on earth does that have to do with the promise to Abraham given 1,900 years earlier? How does that fulfill the promise that Abraham's descendants would become like stars shining in the sky? Well, towards the end of the Bible, in a book called Galatians in chapter 3, it says this: in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. By receiving Jesus, by believing in his name, you are becoming like a star shining in the night sky 4,000 years ago over rural Middle East. You want magic at Christmas? That's magic this Christmas. You want something extraordinary? You want something enchanting? So it leaves us going, well, what does it mean? What does it mean to believe him? What does it mean to receive him? Well, again, if you've paid attention this evening, you've actually heard it or sung it loads and loads of times. What does it mean to believe him and receive him? Well, earlier we sung, "Come thou long expected Jesus," and we sang, "Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever, now thy gracious kingdom bring." And then we sang, "Hark the Herald." And we sang, "Glory to the newborn King." And then we just heard Beth sing, "Glory be to you alone, King who reigns from a manger throne. My life, my praise, everything I own, to Jesus the King on the manger throne." What does it mean to receive him? What does it mean to believe him? It means saying that the center of the universe is not me. It's saying that the world doesn't revolve around me. It's saying even my own life isn't supposed to revolve around me. If my own life revolves around me, I will never escape from the tiny little room of existence that I find myself living in. But we long for the transcendent, and then the transcendent became a tiny little baby. And in that moment, unexpectedly fulfilled an ancient promise. And that isn't a coincidence or just a cute story. It is the story that's at the very center of the universe. It means that God really does keep his promises. It means that our longing for a world to be re-enchanted can happen, that God comes into the world and re-enchants everything that is mundane and offers us a chance to be children again. Not just children like we were growing up, but to be children of God himself, to belong to him and to know him as a father. Now, it might be that all of that is extremely curious to you, that you long for that, but you can't believe that. In which case, well, why? You owe it to yourself to find out more. If it's even possible that all of that could be true, if it's even possible that our longing for enchantment, our longing to be children, and God could really keep his promises, then you owe it to yourself to find out more. If you want to come along to Grace Church and find out more, you're always welcome to do so. Or if in the new year, you want to make it your New Year's project to find out more about that, come along to something called Alpha with Grace Church. It's a great opportunity to find out if there is an enchantment in life that God really offers to us, if this really does stack up, to ask those kind of questions. Or if you just want to come along to church, we're here every week. You're always welcome. But it might be that you're not at a point of going, I want to ask more questions. You're at a point of going, I want to believe this more. I want to be a child. I want to believe in his name. And if that's the case, you want this Christmas to be a bit more enchanted than ever before, can I say that now is as good a time as any? If you want to believe in Jesus, if you want to follow him, then feel free to do so. I was talking to somebody last week who was telling me about how different their last Christmas was from this Christmas. And the reason why last Christmas was so different from this Christmas for them was because, 12 short months ago, they didn't believe any of this. They hadn't received Jesus. They didn't believe in any of this at all. And then in January this year, they met Jesus and discovered all that there was in him. And they couldn't express how much more enchanted this Christmas was going to be for them than last Christmas was. We want to offer you that same enchantment. Maybe this Christmas could be something completely different to any Christmas gone before. Not just because it feeds the nostalgia of our childhood desires to be kids once again, but because it fulfills our deepest possible desires to be children, not again, but to be children of God.